So really quickly, let me just do a brief overview. PTAC, most of you signed up through the PTAC website, and I recognize a lot of the names, so I will make this very brief. Just as a refresher, PTAC helps with everything to do with government contracting. We provide that free assistance from cradle to grave, start to finish on government contracting. And also for those of you that might have offices in multiple locations, you can see the website at aptac-us.org. That's our association website. And right on the landing page of that website is a US map, and you can click on the state and find PTACs for those local regions. And I like to encourage everyone, if you do have multiple business locations, or if your business is expanding so that your place of performance is outside of Alaska, feel free to check out the Alaska or the Association of PTAC and find that PTAC in that neighborhood, especially if, again, you're debating on expanding and you're looking at different geographic regions. Because each of us PTACs, while we all focus on federal contracting, we are also experts for our own local, state, and sub-government, such as the boroughs, the counties, cities for contracting purposes. So a lot of great information, a lot of great events. So just check that out as well. And of course, contact information for PTACs, this is how you can get a hold of us. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reply to your webinar invitation. So that's PTAC in brief. Randy, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter. So if you want to share your screen, let you get your slides up and ready. Hello, hello. We see you. Welcome. Randy always has such great art in the background, and we see your screen. So, sir, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'll be monitoring for questions, and the mic is all yours.
Thank you, Jody. Looks like we have a relatively small group today, which is okay. I don't want to waste your time. I would appreciate if I request everybody, if you don't want to, that's fine. But just real quick, put in the chat what you're hoping to get out of today, and I can focus on that. I've got a fairly thorough presentation. CPARs is one of my subject matter expert areas. Let me back up a little bit. I'm Randy Miller. I am the PCR assigned to Alaska and some of the other western states. The group that I work for is government agency, SBA, Small Business Administration, and the area 6 that I actually work directly under covers all the western states. If you don't know what a PCR does or who we are, that's fine. My elevator speech is that my job is to get as much of the federal contracting dollars into the hands of small business as practical. Now, as I said, practical and not possible. We know there's some things that small business can't do. That being said, I don't work only with small business. I work with large business also in various areas, including subcontracting and just fulfilling those needs and government contracting issues in general. So that being said, we can get into it. I am going to turn my camera off, but again, please participate. Like Jody said, don't wait till the end. I don't want you to forget questions. If there's anything in particular, if you have real world examples or questions, please ask. I'm more than willing to address particular issues, especially we have such a small group today. If you have an individual issue you want to talk or ask about, feel free. We can do it offline later, but if you have issues or things that you're not sure about, please jump in, raise your hand, put something in the chat.
Randy, before we get started, would you like the group to introduce themselves? I can kind of run down the list, unmute them.
I would like that actually, because we only have 5 or so I would like that a lot. Then I can focus the presentation on, instead of just
the businesses. All right. So since here I go and give you the mic and then promptly take it back again. So Anastasia, I'm going to start with you. I've unmuted you. Let me try this one more time. You're self-muted, so if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and say hello.
Hi, this is Anastasia Karitanova with Bratslawski Consulting Engineers. I'm the Director of Contracts, and I'm the one who usually does the contractor part of the CPARs, so this will be very helpful to me.
Hi, Anastasia. Great to hear your voice again. It's been a while.
Thank you, Anastasia. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute yourself. And again, if you guys have questions during, just raise hand and I'll be happy to unmute. Christian, Coleman, you are unmuted on my end. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Christian Coleman with ASRC Builders. I'm the general manager of the subsidiary that focuses mostly on vertical federal contracting. So many of our projects have CPARs. Wanted to make sure we were staying up to date on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Christian. De Lorenco, do you want to say hello? And I apologize if I slaughtered your name. You're self-muted, so if you'll unmute on your end. All right, sir, we're going to come back. Kim Amar, if you want to unmute yourself and then say hello. Oops, let me try one more time, Kim. Okay, now you're just self-muted. Kim, if you're speaking, you're still muted. We can't hear you. Oh, Kim entered a question. Oh, unable to right now. Thanks, Kim. We'll get back. Kim, if you want to put in the chat the company you're with, I can at least pass that on to Randy. Thank you. Natasha, you're just self-muted. If you want to unmute yourself and say hello. Oh, let me try one more time. Okay, Natasha, the mic is yours. You just have to unmute yourself. All right. Well, for those that are just having or don't have mic accessible, if you want to just put your name and the company name in the chat or in the question box, then I can go ahead and forward that to Randy. So,
Okay.
Randy.
And it helps a lot. Anastasia with A&E in the construction with the SRC, that kind of gives me indication of at least some of the folks that are here in that help. We'll just run through. I'll try and some of the slides I'll go through relatively quickly, but
Natasha, I have you have a live mic. Did you want to say hello?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I kept hitting the button and it just would not work. My name's Natasha Blaine, and I work with Copper River Shared Services. I'm a contracts administrator, and I'm responsible for all the CPARs for the entire Copper River family of companies, which is about 10 plus companies. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Randy, I'm muting myself now.
okay, there we go. Thank you, Jody. So yeah, this is great. So the folks that are here, we have a relatively small group, but very, very invested in the CPARs process. A little bit of my history, 24-year Air Force veteran, worked for DOD Air Force as a contracting officer. When I retired for a couple of years, moved back to Alaska in 2010 and worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a contracting officer, procurement analyst, and small business specialist. One of the projects I took on for Fish was fixing their CPARs program. A few years ago, CPARs was a requirement, but nobody really, there was no enforcement. Nobody really paid a lot of attention to it. Then it became a high interest item through Congress. And one of the things that I took on was fixing the CPARs process for Fish and Wildlife Service nationwide. So I got really deep into the weeds into the program. Have some insight on how to fix problems when they occur, how to sometimes when it seems too late to go back and fix some things in CPARs. So that's my history. Now I work for Small Business Administration, SBA. I've been over there since 2018 and really dig my job. I've got a 1 deep position. I have all of Alaska. I cover a couple of very large Navy buying offices in Washington and California. And I work closely with the businesses, mostly in Alaska, but throughout the western states. So CPARs sounds like for the most part people know what CPARs is. It's a government, and when I'm talking federal government. PTAC does more with local and state and tribal governments. I, in particular, during this presentation, will be talking specifically federal government contracting. So CPARs, Contract Performance Assessment Reporting System, is what CPARs stands for. It is the government-wide past performance information system, and it's set up to allow both government and contractor comments to present a balanced view of past performance. What's it used for? The primary purpose for CPARs and other past performance reporting is simply to give contracting officers an idea of how a contractor has performed in the past, which we always say in contracting, what's the best indication of how a contractor is going to perform in the future? It's past performance. This is a 3-component system. There's the evaluations part of it, which is used to report. That's what we're going to be primarily talking about today. FAPIS is part of CPARs. FAPIS is it's Federal Rewarding Performance and Integrity Information System is what FAPIS stands for. It's used to record adverse actions. So if there's a termination for other than the convenience of the government, if it's termination for cause, that all of those entries get put into FAPIS. So it's always in your best interest, if there is a termination pending or that's going to happen, to work with the contracting officer and try to have that termination as a termination for the convenience of the government rather than a termination for cause. And then the third component is the view performance records, which contracting officers use when evaluating proposals to evaluate past performance, of course. All the information in CPARs is source selection sensitive, which means nobody sees it unless they have a need to know. So your competitors do not see your CPARs. Likewise, you would not see CPARs from any other company than your own. So thresholds for reporting. There's civilian agencies and there's DoD agencies. So in general, architect and engineer NAICS codes is $35,000 total contract value. Construction $700,000, and all other contracts is oversat $250,000. The system uses FPDS reporting to determine what contracts should be in CPAR kind of automatically. Each contract still needs to be registered, but there's an automated process that identifies contracts over these thresholds, depending on NAICS codes, and recommends for the focal point to register. DoD has higher thresholds for their systems, which is aircraft and big items is 5 million. Non-systems for operation support is 5. Services is 1 million. IT is 1 million. Ship overhaul and repair is 500,000, which probably nobody in this audience is doing. I'm guessing maybe ASRC. And then A&E is also 35 700,000. That construction number, I'm not sure. I have to go back and double check. I thought DOD was 1.5, but when I built this slide, I did put $700,000 in there. So these are the thresholds. That being said, CPARs reports can be done at any dollar level. Why would that happen? Well, one, if there's poor performance in particular and the contracting officer or program personnel want to document that. If the contractor just cannot perform for reasons that were their fault, that were not beyond their control, then sometimes reports are put in. And also for small business, a lot of times anybody can request, but if a small business trying to build past performance can certainly request that CPARs are done, and often they do. And usually in my experience, when you ask if a CPARs report would be done on a contract, normally they're pretty agreeable to doing that. It depends on the agency and the dollar amount to some extent. But if you do that, I've got some recommendations later on that you provide the input to make it easy for the assessing official to write your CPARs. And that applies to all instances, but particularly if you're asking them to do one when it's not required. So their interim and final reports. Reporting is required annually on multi-year contracts, and reporting is done at the conclusion of the period of performance. We can touch on how long things stay in at this point. For other than A&E construction, reports are held in the system for 3 years, and 3 years from the end of the period of performance. So that means if you have a services contract and you've got a contract with 5 option years, that first report from the first year is going to be in the system 8 years, because the time that this reports are in the system are from the end of period of performance, regardless of option years. A&E construction is 6 years. I'm sorry, it's 6 years for A&E and construction. So 6 years from the final period of performance. So it's possible if you have a contract that is base plus 4 option years, you could have possibly 6 reports in there if there's an extension. So you'd have one for each year, you'd have one at the conclusion, which normally would be 5. But if you had a 6 months or 3 month extension at the end of that, you would have a 5th year reporting as an annual one, and then you would have the final report when the performance is done. So roles. Here are the roles that are performed in CPARs. There's a focal point, the assessing official's rep, this is optional. There's the assessing official, contractor rep, and reviewing official. The focal point, ultimate focal point, is a government employee who manages the CPAR systems. They're the one that put in the registered contracts for CPARs. They're the ones that are going to put your information and when I say your, I'm referring specifically to the vendor information. I don't think we have any contracting officers down here. I do this presentation for both government and non-government people. So the focal point, the assessing official rep, and the assessing official are all government employees. Those are inherently governmental positions. There will always be a government employee. And then the contractor rep, and of course, is the vendor's rep. And then again, the reviewing official will always be a government employee also. So the focal point, that's the person who puts in the records. You might get a call or an email from the focal point or your contracting officer, or possibly program personnel when an award is made, saying, hey, this award's been made, CPARs are going to be required. Who is your preferred representative? You can have a separate representative for CPARs for each and every one of your contracts if you want to. It sounds like I think Natasha has a handful of subsidiaries that she does all the CPARs for, and that's normally how it is. You would normally Most companies have one CPARs focused person to do the CPARs, which makes a lot of sense because it is a relatively specialized area, and depending on the number of contracts you might have, it's not something you're doing every single day. The assessing official rep, that's an optional position. Let's get down to assessing official before we talk about the rep. The assessing official is normally the contracting officer or a program person who is doing the official comments and ratings and sending them to the contractor. The assessing official's representative is often a program personnel who knows the ins and outs of the daily operation of the contract and puts input for that assessing official to forward. Contractor representative, that's you guys generally, and the contractor representative's responsibilities are receiving the CPARs, going in, making comments, coordinating with the assessing official, and making a concur or non-concur on the CPARs itself. Reviewing official is another optional one that is required if you non-concur. If you have a report that you non-concur with, it has to go to a reviewing official that's one level above the assessing official. Or some agencies by policy have a reviewing official review all of them too, but that's not, I guess, normal would be my comment there. All right, so again, contractor rep. The email, if those of you are not familiar with them, comes from it's kind of a strange address. It says Nav Smith. It's a Navy system. The Navy manages the CPAR system. And so it's got this kind of strange email address that you need to pay attention to. You need to make sure it's whitelisted, that it doesn't go to your spam or junk folders. Excuse me. And hopefully your government representatives are in contact with you with CPARs outside of the CPAR system. That's hit or miss. I would say, just as a guess, probably less than 50% of assessing officials talk to their contractors outside of the system. I always did. I just thought it was a best process. I also will talk about some more best processes later, but I also would oftentimes send my draft report to the contractor and say, this is what I've got, this is what I have so far, do you have input? So talk about timelines in a minute. So here's the workflow summary. When the contract is awarded, normally within 30 days, oh no, I just totally slipped my mind. Oh wait, the manager enters the contracts, and again, it's not an automated process. The system will come up with a list of contracts that it thinks you should register that are under your purview, normally under the DODAC of the manager, and then those are registered. And at that point, the email address and POC for the contractor is entered there. It's pretty important to know which contracts are going to require CPARs and keep track of them. There have been, as possible, typos get put in, or that old information for previous contracts, if the contractor's representative is changed, sometimes get put in. So it's a good practice to keep track of your new contracts and the CPARs information. So when it's due, say it's a multi-year contract, after the first year of performance, the proposed ratings and narratives are put in either by the contracting officer, or the assessing officer, or the assessing officer's representatives. They're validated, if necessary, by the assessing official, and then it goes to the contractor for comments. A couple important things about when it goes to the contractor. You have 60 days total to respond. Recommend you do not take the entire 60 days unless you need to, unless there's some significant problems you need to address. If you're not going to make comments, and I always recommend that you do make comments, even if everything is rosy, don't wait the 60 days. Just turn it around, concur with it, and let the assessing official close it out. At day 15, whether you comment or not, the CPARs as you received it, as it is in the system that you can see now, goes to PIPers and is visible to contracting officers in general. So if you have awards pending, or if you've got solicitations in, proposals in, and it's been 15 days since the CPAR has been submitted, those are available for the evaluating folks on your new proposal. So don't think that you've got the 60 days if something's like derogatory or something's not great, that it's not going to show up for 60 days. It doesn't. It shows up in 15 days, even though it's still pending. And again, it's just consider it if you knock these things out. If you're just going to make it, hey, we agree, this is great, love working with Park Service or whatever, and concur, get it done and get it out of the way so the assessing official can finish it. Any questions there? So once you concur or not concur, it goes back to the assessing official. If you concur, and they can close it out at that point, or make comments and close out. If you not concur, it always goes to the reviewing official. So what does the form look like? These are just the tabs around. I've got screenshots of most of these. The initial tabs are, when you get it, these will all be filled out. Much of this information is populated when it's pulled over from SPDS NG, but some of this information gets put in by the assessing official. So the tabs that are on there is evaluation type, whether it's an interim, a final. There's addendum. I don't normally see addendums very much. If there are problems, my preferred method is go back and fix the final, and rather than make an addendum report. There's a period of performance being assessed. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get further down into the slides. And then the business sector, contracting officer, where the work was done, complexity. Again, this is just kind of generic what's in the information tabs. There is a tab on here that says type of termination, which is odd. As a CO, you always have to put in that there was no termination. It's just one of those goofy things. Miscellaneous information. This is where the project title and your effort description gets put in. This is a space where you can influence what gets put in here. Sometimes contracting officers, I'm sorry, my experience is it's mostly contracting officers that are assessing officials. That they're not always that way, especially in bigger organizations. The assessing official, sometimes we'll put just a short contract effort description here. If there are key things that you did on the effort, this is a great place to get them put in. If you had innovative IT solutions or new industry solutions, innovative ideas, that kind of stuff, this is where that goes. Small business utilization, this is only used in cases where there's a subcontracting plan. So if you're a small business, if it's a small business set aside, if there was not a subcontracting plan, this tab is an NA. It doesn't get filled out at all. Cost control is another tab that if it's a firm fixed price contract, there shouldn't be anything cost control. Sometimes there is, but normally cost control is an NA for firm fixed price contracts also. All these other tabs are somewhat optional too. When doing the CPARs, you have to, as an assessment official, you have to fill in at least one of these tabs, but there's no requirement to fill all of them in. If you had a simple delivery of widgets, quality and schedule is probably, you know, the two that will be filled in. Management may not apply if you're just doing a supply type contract. 24,000 character limit, which is a lot. I figured that out one day and I forget what it is, but there's a 24,000 character limit for both the assessing official and the contractors representative in each one of these tabs and at the overall tab. If you ever fill that character limit in for even one of these areas, I think you've probably gone overboard. Here's our grading scale. This one I really like to emphasize. The vast majority of government contracts fall into the satisfactory range if CPARs is done correctly. Again, we'll talk a little bit more in that we're often high performers or used to getting very good or exceptional. To get better or worse than satisfactory, so to get better than satisfactory, you have to do something that's more than just meeting the requirements of the contract and that has a benefit to the government. That's a tricky, kind of a slippery slope. You can't give things to the government without being compensated for them. So this falls into delivery schedules and that kind of thing. If you delivered 3 weeks early on a critical item and it saved the government $6 bazillion, that's what falls into moving out of satisfactory into the very good and or exceptional ranges. Same thing, to get lower than satisfactory, you as a contractor would have to fail to perform some aspects of the contract or have significant problems in performance of the contract that you did not resolve. So just because the contractor had some problems performing on contract, as long as they resolve those problems, they should still be in the satisfactory range and not in the marginal or unsatisfactory range. The definitions, these are straight out of the FAR, it's 42-1503, table 42-1, that emphasizes these things, right? To justify satisfactory, there should have been only minor problems or major problems the contractor recovered from without the impact of the contract order. So if the government had a problem with the way you were storing some materials and it did not impact the final contract, you still were able to either deliver them or build the building you were building with it, whatever, without damage to the materials, they should not ding you for that. That falls firmly into satisfactory. So for marginal, to identify marginal performance, identify significant event in each category the contractor had trouble overcoming and state how it impacted the government. So when satisfactory is relatively easy to write, you still need to put narratives in as the assessing official. They still need to put narratives in that support the satisfactory. Why was the performance in accordance with the contract? To knock down to a marginal, the assessing official has to say exactly what the issues were and that they were unresolved. So in catching these things early is key. We're going to talk about that when we get into the narratives here in a second. And then there's the assessors tab, which is the just a generic. These are some other comments that the assessor wants to put in. So factual detail narrative is required for all evaluations, even satisfactory ratings. Current, accurate, complete statements about the contractor's performance without editorializing is important. So here's the Contractors Representative tab. Again, the comments, I recommend putting comments in always, even if there was, say you got an excellent and they just raved about you, it's always good just to put a little bit in, hey, we really like working with the U.S. Corps of Engineers on this project and look forward to future projects. And then the concur and non-concur, right? So sometimes contractors feel like they cannot non-concur with this because they feel like they're going to get blackballed. I always encourage contractors to non-concur if they do not agree with the rating itself. The narratives are another story. You can, if the narratives, you can answer the narrative comments in your narrative and still concur with the rating. If you've got a rating that you don't, excuse me, that you feel is undeserved and should be higher, there's when you non-concur. There's a better way around that, and that's being involved throughout the performance of the contract. I'm going to talk about that towards the end. Things that you can actually do as a contractor to hopefully ensure the best CPARs ratings that you can hope for. Oops. Okay. Total 60 days, we talked about that. If the contractor representative sends a comments and concurs within the first 14 days, it will go to PIPers for the view side of it within a day. If you don't answer it within 15 days, then it will also go out there in a pending status. Talked about that earlier. And then on day 61, if you have not entered any comments after 60 days, it's closed out to you. You'll be able to view it after it's finalized, but you can't even, once you send it back with comments, concur, non-concur, or on day 61, you're locked out of it until it's finalized. All right, narratives. So right now, let me take a little breath. I'm going to pause a minute and before we switch gears into narratives and see if anybody has any comments or questions or anything we want to hit up before we start talking about the most important part, which is the narratives.
So Randy, right now we don't have any questions for our attendees. Again, if you just want to click that raise hand, be happy to unmute you. All right, sir, so far so good. And again, if you think of questions after the fact, go ahead, either click that raise hand or get that in the question and answer box so that we can get those answered.
All righty, so narratives. Keys to a good narrative that's accurate, fair, and comprehensive. So accurate describes performance. Fair, sometimes I see CPARs used as a cudgel to beat up on contractors that a program person was not happy with. They didn't get what they wanted, they didn't get exactly the way they wanted it. So they use CPARs to kind of punish a contractor. If that happens, contact me immediately and we'll work around fix actions. I've had a handful of success stories where narratives were, I'll just say unfair and poorly written, and where we've gotten them fixed. There's one recently, the Navy assessing officials representative clearly had an extra grind. It was, to me, in the write-up, it was obvious, and any contract officer that was reviewing it would have seen it fairly obvious too, but it was still, they had a marginal rating overall, and they said they would not. One of the things that a rating official says at the very end of the report is they have to make a selection. There's a statement with a drop down that says, knowing what I know from this contractor, I would or would not, is the drop down, use them for future requirements. And so this one, just a, you know, a bad CPARs, a would not on that drop down, and the report itself was way below reporting requirements. It didn't meet the thresholds. So it was clear that they were unhappy and they wanted to beat up the contract. We had some conversations with them. I didn't get involved until almost the very end. The contractor only had a couple of days to respond in their 60-day period. I really wish they would have got with me at the very beginning. Anyway, at the end of the day, we got that one. We pulled back out of CPARs. Not only did we get it modified, we just had them delete it. The agency, they had no show cause, they had no cure notices, they had no record of informing the contractor that they weren't happy with their performance. So it is possible. Don't feel like at the end of the day that you're over a barrel if there's a narrative, or I mean if there's negative things that are put in. That being said, get on it early. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, about how being involved throughout the process, providing input to the assessing official can go a long ways towards having good CPARs reports. A bad CPAR should never be a surprise to a contractor. And this is me preaching on the government side, that you as contractors should never be surprised if performance is an issue, and it should never come out at CPARs. If there's problems with the contract, you should know way before. You should know exactly, you should know when the performance is an issue and not at evaluation time. Also, evaluations timeline wise, your CPARs evaluation should be for the period of performance defined in that reporting period. So if you have a 5-year base and 4 option year contract, you're just finished performing year 3, the CPARs should address year 3 only and not year 1, year 2. The exceptions to that are if there are problems you had in year 2 that you've resolved or that are ongoing, then those can be addressed. But if you had a problem in year 1, year 2, and you fixed it, those problems should not continue to be mentioned in year 3. That's not always the case, something that as a vendor you need to be aware of, because sometimes the people doing the CPARs don't understand that and they cut and paste. So, so there's a narrative required for each rated element, meaning if there is a rating, satisfactory, marginal, etc., for a component, it should have a narrative. That being said, I'd mentioned before about cost in small business, that if those areas are not rated, you of course don't need narratives. So address ratings changes from prior reports. Again, going back to my previous example, if you had a problem in year 2, you were marginal in managerial, and then year 3 you are satisfactory or better, those should be addressed in the narrative, saying, hey, you know, they had a problem last year, this is what they did to fix it. Always benefits and impacts to the government should be part of the narratives. Risk, in this slide, a couple of these slides really go back to the rating officials on the government side, but it's important that you know about them so you can have input on and understanding if something's written up, good or bad, your response to it. Assessment officials should recognize the risk inherent if a contractor takes on an inherent risk on something that's never been done before, or that there's a timeline that's critical. Those should be recognized in the narratives. I just lost a train of thought on that. Oh, the impact. So the risk and the impact. See, there's 3-part delivery schedule, and it's extremely important that the first part of the delivery schedule is on time. say you have a contract for body armor and we've got troops deploying somewhere that need the body armor, and they need 50,000 of those by this date, and then there's another 20,000 that's for backup for stock, and it's not quite important that it makes that those are delivered as timeline. If you deliver those 50,000 and you met the timeline, or even delivered early, but then on the 20,000 you were 2 weeks late, it's much more important and impactful that you delivered the critical ones on time than you were a little bit late on the second order. So that's important to differentiate between what's important to the contract effort and what's maybe not as important. So here's our categories. We're going to talk a little about each one of them. There's quality, schedule, cost control, management, small business, regulatory, and other areas. Quality, the assessment will be directly related to the contract requirements, specifications, standards of good workmanship. Did the contractor meet the requirements of the contract? Is your reporting accurate? Was there an inordinate amount of government direction, or was the contractor able to solve problems on their own? Schedule, timeliness, right? Basically, if you delivered on time, if you met milestones, and then some administrative requirements on deliveries. Cost control, again, this relates to cost type contracts, not firm fixed price. If you are being rated under a cost contract, these are the areas that get rated. Forecasting, managing, controlling. If there's an overrun, if there's an underrun, and again on the slide, not required for firm fixed price. Management. This is the area, this is kind of a little bit of a catch-all area where management of the effort during the contract period there's a lot of areas that falls under management. Managing your subcontractors, key personnel. If you have problems, communication with the government is huge here. If you do not ignore the government when there are contract issues. Even if you have major issues in a contract, if you maintain good communications with the contracting officer and or the management personnel or the CR, goes a long way towards making sure you don't have an awful CPARs. Small business subcontracting, again, if there's a subcontracting plan, how well compliance was rated with it. This is becoming more and more important. And SBA has come out with much better guidelines recently on how well large businesses comply with their subcontracting promises. Oh, and then regulatory compliance. There's another one where, especially under construction and sometimes A&E contracts where there's much more regulations, both local and federal, that will get rated. Quality assurance plans, financial regulation, and again applying to the clauses, the FAR clauses in the contract. All right, so now we're going to go to a few examples on what's good and what's not so good. All these examples came straight from the CPARs system, from their training that I plagiarized, and they're based on this VFED. So the contractor provides maintenance and support of VFED for the General Service Administration. Is this sufficient? Is this good? Is that, like, if you're going to say, a low risk, low complexity contract and they met what they did, is this good? No, this is pretty awful, right? It's not awful, but it is not descriptive. Remember, when these are being written, they're being written for evaluators on future requirements. So if you were this VFED contractor, is this good? You don't know yet, but when we read the next slide, makes a little more sense. All right, so this is much more detailed, right? So VFED stands for Very Fancy Engine Database. That was their, instead of just saying VFED, and this one spells it out. This is what it is. Next, this is what it does. This program manages 24,000 engines in 2 million serially tracked critical engine parts and components. Daily basis, maintenance repair records. Contractors responsible for maintenance of the Oracle database. And the program was developed by the previous incumbent, and the new contractors are responsible for upgrades and configuration management. And then during the period, generally 2 system upgrades and 5,000 help desk requests. It talks about complexity and risk in there. Quality, exceptional. The contractor's exceptional. They continue to provide high quality support and database services. We've seen this more frequently than I would like to admit. It's sometimes CPARs turns into, okay, we have to get this done because it says we have to get it done, so let's just stick some stuff in there. So this doesn't have detailed, no support. This is better, right? Exceptional. It described, excuse me, that there was a malicious code virus attack, and what the contractor did, they were proactive with success recovery. They implemented an innovative solution, they enhanced security, and so on and so on. So this is really, down in the weeds. This is what the contractor did over and above what was required in the contract to deserve a exceptional rating. Very good. In our opinion, the contractor has done really well in terms of schedule, system, security manager. Jack Jones is pleasant and easy to work with. He adapts to our schedule changes amazingly and never complains. He also went above and beyond and assembled our smart board and projected without charging the government. And he continued to meet all contract objectives in there. And great job. So what do you think? This sounds good, right? On the surface, this, hey, Jack's doing a good job. Some major problems with this one. In our opinion, we think never complains. These things just don't belong in there. In our opinion, we think the opinion type stuff should not be in there. It should be factual. Also, this one, a similar smart board projected without charging the government. That's a foul, right? Performed things that were outside of the scope of contract, did not get paid for it. Shouldn't be done. Statements to avoid, right? Anything outside the contract scope shouldn't be in there. So again, that goes back to the fine line between performing over and above and performing outside of the scope of the contract can be a tightrope to walk sometimes. Should not say in our opinion, or it appeared, or we think, we hope, we were not happy. Those types of statements don't belong there. Again, doesn't directly go back to your side, but when you're writing input for your assessors, be careful about these kinds of statements. It should be factual. This is what we did and how we performed. And this is just you guys can have these slides. I'm not going to read through every single one of them, but it just goes back to examples of things that are well written and things that are not well written. Marginal, so let's see. The contractors in marginal management during this reporting period, subcontract was awarded 4 weeks later than required. The result is funding increases while using junior developers. That helped us experience high turnover. In addition, the maximum response time for customer calls and emails is 1/2 day for tier 1 support. Metrics provided indicated 3 to 4 day average. So this is saying straight up, this is what they did. And then the 6 months after the review, the contractor implemented aggressive recruiting and training program, thus reducing response time to 2 or 3 days. So 2 or 3 days, it's better, but it's not within the contract requirement. There's where they're a marginal. If the contractor would have fixed these issues within the rating period, this should have been satisfactory. But again, they didn't. So, again, example of this is just not enough supporting information to support the rating. Okay, so low risk activities. It might be difficult to get things above a satisfactory. And note this in the CPAR. So if you get a satisfactory and you did great, you know, you delivered on time, so and so. I always put a statement in there, especially this is particularly in relationship to supplies. Ordered 100 computers, 100 computers arrived on time or early a little bit, but there was really no impact to the government, good or bad. I always put in, due to the nature of this requirement, and then I would say what it was. It would be very difficult for any contractor to achieve higher than a satisfactory rating, because there really isn't anything you could have done to deserve a higher than a satisfactory. Here's a good example. So given the nature of the services performed for this contract and the schedule for refuse collection, it would be difficult to obtain above a satisfactory rating performance on this contract. That's just stating out there for anybody reviewing later that, okay, yeah, they got a satisfactory, that's good. And if you understand the system, that's good. But the statement in there that due to the nature of the services that you couldn't do better is always helpful. Okay, so some meat and potatoes. This slide was designed for the government, but it goes both ways, right? Communications. Communicate throughout the period of performance with the government. Ensure that your rating official in particular knows what you're doing and that you are aware of any performance questions or problems that they may be concerned with on the government side. So the documentation on significant events, both positive and negative, is a big deal for writing the CPARs. Create working CPAR, draft online, draft offline document, use copy and paste. Again, this is for the government side that goes back to you, especially as a CPARs representative for your company. Throughout the period, keep a Word document of things, of milestones and things significant to the contract performance that you can provide as the time comes near for the CPARs to be written. Again, on the government side, provide helpful hints. Best practice, provide the contractor draft evaluation. I'd be interested to know if any of you guys are getting draft evaluations. My guess is probably no. But if I didn't get good input, or if I got, especially if it looked like a report was going to be bad, I would ask for input from the vendor before I put it into CPARs and send it to them. Contractor may provide self-assessment. One of the 2 handouts that's on here is called, it's, I don't see it right now. Anyway, the handout is a questionnaire that I developed many years ago and sent to my program people when I was getting ready to write CPARs. And basically it's each one of the categories, if it applies, all 5 of the ratings, all 4 of the ratings where they could circle them. Actually, the original document I had was a drop down there. And then a space for commentary, for narrative. I would encourage you to take this and use it for each and every one of your contracts that has the CPARs. and fill it out throughout the performance about 15 to 30 days before your CPARs is going to come due. Send it to your assessing official and say, here are my inputs. Please use them as you see fit.
And so for everyone who already catches his breath there, that document is it's a Word document. It says CPARs Assessing Official Rep Questionnaire.
Thank you, Jody. And that kind of, it just reflects these things. You'll see in that Word document, there's an area for quality schedule, cost control management, small business regulatory, and other. It makes it easy. Make the life of your assessing official easy. If they can cut and paste from a document that you provide them into the CPARs, it's going to make them smile. Believe me, they will. And they're not going to take what you provide without double checking with the program, or it depends on how intimate they are with the contract itself, right? If they know about the contract and they work with you on a regular basis, they might just cut and paste what you put in there. They may send the document you send to the program personnel, say, hey, take a look through this, see what you think. Do you agree or do you disagree with any of this? So the original ratings tab will always be there. Even if you non-concur, the original ratings tab is there. If you non-concur, then there's an additional tabs that come up for anything that has changed. The reviewers tab, same thing. There's 24,000 characters, and that's the reviewer that only is required if there is a non-concur on your part. All right, for you guys, keep track of reportable contracts in your timelines. Know when CPARs are due. Pay attention to those NAVSmith emails. The original email and the emails about your reports being due or your comments being due come from that goofy address, but they look like, when you open it up, the text looks like it's coming from the reviewing official. Provide your assessing official with input throughout, but especially 30 days or so before the CPARs are due. I recommend you add comments to all CPARs. It shows that you are engaged and that you're looking at the system. And also, I really want to emphasize, don't just let the thing expire after 60 days. If you're good with the way the CPARs looks, put it in there, say concur, and send it back. That adds a level of closure to the assessing official to know that you've actually seen it and returned it to them. It's absolutely okay to non-concur on negative reports. I wouldn't non-concur on everything that comes down the road, but if there's things that you don't agree with in it, one, make comments on it. Put your reasonable, factual position on any negative comments. If you don't agree with the rating, if it's a marginal and you think it should be satisfactory, or if it's satisfactory and you think you did some great things to deserve a higher than satisfactory, non-concur and put those comments in there. And CPARs can be requested below the threshold. So if you do a fantastic job on a contract, or even a good job and you want to build your CPARs, request that the CPARs be done, but take that form I sent you, fill it out. It doesn't have to be completely filled out for every tab, but fill out the tabs that apply and send it into the assessing official or the contracting officer. If you know who the administrator is, send it to them and request that that they do a CPARs for you. This is what the new system looks like, the current CPAR system. If you haven't been in it, this is when you first hit it up. There's the home access. Here's what the learning system looks like. These two tabs, the function and role, essentially, if you click either one of them, it goes to the same place. This is training by roles. I don't think I put, yeah. If you do it by function, it kind of does the same thing. So the Contractors Representative is here. what we've gone through, if you go out there, you can either do it in a video format, or there's a text Word version of it that you can just download and read through if you want to. Corporate Senior Contractor Representative, that's a role I didn't really address much. That role is allowed to see all reports that were done under their purview for wherever, you know, the Kim, I think, said she had, no, Natasha, in Copper River has Ken. So if she had 5, another contractor representative had another 5. The corporate senior contractor representative would be able to see all of them, but they're not able to comment or do anything with them other than view them. And then the training is not limited by role. If you wanted to know what the focal point does, you can go and read through or take that training at any point you want. The assessing official representative, or review official, that might not be a bad training to go look at if you are primarily responsible for the CPARs for your company, to see how the assessing officials are being trained. That's the slides that I have. I'm trying to think if I have any other input. Biggest thing is, if you have problems, get a hold of me quickly. PTAC also, generally PTAC's going to refer you to me if you have a CPARs problem. If it's just a matter of writing narratives or answering a narrative that you're not necessarily going to non-concur with, they'll probably be able to help you too, and how you're going to answer, and how you're going to answer those things. If there's an issue, again, like the one that I mentioned, I've had a handful that I've had either revised or pulled out of the system that were unfair, right? I don't do it very often. I very rarely ask an agency to back out, to request CPARs be backed out, but it can be done. And I learned that when I was working for Fish and Wildlife, when I had submitted something and then the contractor convinced me that they had done a better job than how I had reviewed them, and I didn't want that negative stuff in there and just revise it at the end of the day and still have that negative stuff there and then the revised report. So it was easy. I just got a hold of the CPARs help desk and said, hey, please revert this back to a draft status. And at that point, I could either delete it or rewrite it completely. So it can be done. It's not standard practice, but don't feel all is lost if you get a crappy CPARs and that a timeline has expired. It all goes back to the willingness of the agency, of the assessing official, of the administrator, to be flexible and listen. And sometimes when people think CPARs, it's done. It's like, it's in the system, there's nothing we can do about it. The help desk at CPARs can do anything they want. So just to be clear, does anybody have any stories, either good or bad, with CPARs? I hope this is helpful, and please feel free to reach out to me at any point if you want to dig deeper into the weeds or specific things. We had one, I've got a good example, that we had a construction contractor that built this really amazing facility for one of the ANCs. And they had a few performance issues, but mostly it was one that was remote, so it was difficult to get subcontractors. And one of the subs they used, they had to get rid of and self-perform some work because they just weren't doing a good job. And another was how they were storing some of the construction materials. At the end of the day, everything was fine. They finished on time. They finished under budget. Life was great. And the agency wrote them a crappy CPARs. We had limited success with getting that one fixed. But that one was a case where if we would have caught it earlier, part of the problem is, one, that report was done very late. It was 2 or 3 years after performance. They were, I'm sure, filling some boxes in because they had overdue reports. Had a crappy report. The vendor thought it was spam. The emails they were getting, they didn't even read them because, one, it was so far beyond the period of performance, it was completely off their scope that maybe that email was pertaining to a project that had finished 3 years before. And it was during COVID, and it was during, the time of, hey, look out for all these spam stuff. So they thought it was spam. They didn't even address it. So it was a little late when we got involved in it, but we still could have they still could have deleted them. And we had really, really, really good reasons for having them deleted. I mean, they had a webpage devoted, the agency had a webpage devoted to how great this place was, how great, and how important it was to the community. And then they hammered them on the CPARs. They finished on time, they finished under budget. They should have been satisfactory, and I would, and that's not how it was written. My point there is, get to it early. It's a lot easier to fix early in the process than it is later, especially after some people have moved on. And again, I would really like to see, somebody raise their hand, ask a question, whatever. If not, that's all I have.
So Randy, I had only scheduled the workshop for an hour, so we're running a little bit over. And if it was supposed to be an hour and a half, I apologize for the error on my end. But at this point in time, I don't have any further questions. And
I was thinking we started at 10:30 for some reason. I am sorry that I ran an extra 15 minutes. Hopefully it was valuable information.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of great takeaways on this, that be responsive, be proactive. And if you aren't sure if it's junk mail or not junk mail, you can always forward that email to PTAC. We like those because it kind of helps us, see what's going out there so we can help the contractors be aware of. Because yeah, there is so much junk mail for agency third-party companies. Just is questionable. Well, I'm going to do a last call for questions. And again, if this is something that you have questions and want to follow with offline, we have Randy's contact information. And at any point in time, you're also welcome to add PTAC into that mix or send it to us, and then I can let you know if it's something I feel that Randy is the better expert on. Either way, the important part is, instead of just kind of mulling over something, if you want to ask, never worry about wasting our time. Get those questions out there and get that in a timely manner so that you're not trying to repair those CPARs after the fact. Randy, we do have a comment. Thank you for your time. Not quite there yet, but very good source. Yeah.
Got to hear from all of you, but especially Anastasia and Christian and Natasha that are actively working on CPARs. Anastasia, I know this is old hat to you. You've been around with these for a while, but I would love to hear from any of you with any issues or, and any comments too. I'm all about constructive feedback. If there's things that were not useful to you during this, great. If there's things that were especially useful, yeah, please let me know. Okay, I do these, I don't know what, Jody, once or twice a year for vendors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, guys, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Natasha says thank you, Randy. And you guys have a fantastic day. Go find our sunshine again. I don't know about the rest of you, but here in Anchorage, it was started positive.